63,440 passing yards, 421 touchdown passes, 252 consecutive starts, 8 Pro Bowls, 5 AFC West titles. These aren't just numbers. They're the legacy of a man who gave everything to the game of football for 17 seasons. A quarterback who played through a torn ACL in a championship game. A leader who never missed a start in 15 years. A competitor whose passion was so fierce yet so pure that he became famous for trash-talking without a single curse word. And yet, when the gold jackets were handed out in Canton, Philip Rivers wasn't there to receive one. In February 2025, when Eli Manning, the quarterback Rivers was famously traded for on draft night, couldn't even make it into the Hall of Fame on his first ballot, the message became clear. Philip Rivers, one of the greatest statistical quarterbacks in NFL history, might be forgotten by the Hall of Fame. How did a player who ranks 5th all-time in passing yards and 5th in passing touchdowns get overlooked? How did a quarterback who J.J. Watt said could read defenses better than the defenders themselves get pushed aside? How did a man who played at such a high level with toughness, class, and style, as Hall of Famer Dan Fouts put it, end up on the outside looking in? This is the story of Philip Rivers, the forgotten legend of the NFL. If you find this story as fascinating as I do, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss another deep dive into sports history. To understand Rivers' complicated legacy, we need to go back to where it all began, the 2004 NFL Draft. It was a night of drama unlike any other. The San Diego Chargers held the first overall pick. They selected Eli Manning, son of NFL legend Archie Manning, and brother of Peyton. But there was a problem. Eli Manning refused to play for the Chargers. That's right. Before even stepping onto an NFL field, Manning forced a trade by threatening to sit out the entire season if the Chargers didn't trade him. The New York Giants, picking 4th, had selected Philip Rivers. The teams quickly orchestrated a trade, sending Manning to New York and Rivers to San Diego, along with additional draft picks. It was a move that would define both franchises for the next decade and a half. And it created an unbreakable connection between Rivers, Manning, and Ben Roethlisberger, the 3 quarterbacks selected in the first round of that draft. From day one, Rivers carried the burden of being the other guy, the quarterback the Chargers settled for after Manning's refusal. There was immediate skepticism. Was this less flashy quarterback from North Carolina State good enough to lead an NFL franchise? Rivers would spend his first 2 seasons on the bench behind Drew Brees, another future Hall of Famer. When Brees suffered a serious shoulder injury in 2005 and subsequently signed with the New Orleans Saints, Rivers finally got his chance to start. What followed was one of the most remarkable careers in NFL history. Over 17 seasons, Rivers amassed numbers that put him among the all-time greats. He currently ranks 5th in NFL history with 63,440 passing yards, ahead of Hall of Famers like John Elway, Joe Montana, and Dan Marino. He's 5th all-time in touchdown passes with 421. He completed 5,277 passes, also 5th in history. He had 12 4,000-yard passing seasons, another remarkable achievement. But perhaps his most impressive stat was his durability. Rivers started 252 consecutive games, the longest active streak in the NFL at the time of his retirement, and the 3rd longest consecutive start streak in NFL history. This wasn't just about showing up, it was about playing through pain that would sideline most players. The most dramatic example came in the 2008 AFC Championship game when Rivers played on a torn ACL. Not after recovery, not with limited mobility. He played an entire playoff game with a torn ACL against the undefeated New England Patriots. Think about that for a moment. Most players can't walk with a torn ACL. Rivers played an AFC Championship game, the highest stakes contest of his career to that point, with one. This was who Philip Rivers was. A competitor whose toughness was unmatched. A leader who refused to let his team down. A quarterback whose ability to read defenses was so extraordinary that defensive star J.J. Watt once shared a story about Rivers correctly identifying a blitz. The defense was about to run and telling a linebacker he was lined up wrong. And yet, despite these accomplishments, something was missing from Rivers' resume. In a sport where championship rings often define legacies, Philip Rivers never made it to the Super Bowl. It wasn't for lack of trying. Rivers led the Chargers to the playoffs 6 times. He won 5 division titles. He reached the AFC Championship game once. That same game he played with a torn ACL. But each time, something went wrong. Sometimes it was Rivers himself making critical mistakes in big moments. Other times it was special teams failures, defensive collapses, or coaching decisions that cost the team. In the 2006 playoffs, the Chargers went 14-2 in the regular season, before losing their first playoff game to the Patriots after a fumbled interception by safety Marlon McCree that could have sealed the victory. In 2007, they reached the AFC Championship game with Rivers playing on that torn ACL, but fell to the undefeated Patriots. In 2009, they went 13-3 only to lose to the New York Jets in the divisional round after 3 missed field goals. Year after year, the story was the same. Regular season success followed by playoff disappointment. And while football is the ultimate team sport, quarterbacks receive both outsized credit for wins and outsized blame for losses. Fair or not, Rivers' inability to reach the Super Bowl has become the defining narrative of his career, the missing piece that may keep him out of the Hall of Fame. But to understand Philip Rivers is to understand that statistics and championships only tell part of the story. What made Rivers truly special was his personality. In an era where many athletes become carefully managed corporate entities, Rivers was refreshingly authentic. He wore his emotions on his sleeve. He celebrated with unbridled joy. He competed with fire and passion. And yes, he talked trash. But Rivers' trash talk was famously clean. No cursing, no vulgarity, just gosh dang it and dadgummit, delivered with the same intensity that others reserve for expletives. ESPN analyst Dominique Foxworth, who played against Rivers in both college and the NFL, put it this way: "That man was far too good and would talk trash in your face after throwing a touchdown." Rivers was a throwback, a country kid from Alabama who never lost touch with his roots. He was married to his high school sweetheart and famously had 9 children. He commuted from San Diego to Los Angeles in a custom SUV with a film room when the Chargers moved, rather than uproot his family. His throwing motion was unorthodox, almost painful to watch at times. Analysts constantly questioned how he could throw a football so effectively with such strange mechanics. Yet, season after season, he delivered precision passes and racked up yards. Perhaps most importantly, Rivers represented a dying breed in professional sports, the one-team player. For 16 years, he was the face of the Chargers franchise, first in San Diego, then in Los Angeles. Only in his final season did he move on to the Indianapolis Colts. Even his retirement announcement spoke volumes about who he was. Rather than going to ESPN or a national outlet, he gave the story to San Diego Union Tribune columnist Kevin Acee, who had covered him for years. It was his way of saying thank you to the city and fans that had supported him for so long. This brings us to the central question: does Philip Rivers deserve to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame? The answer is complicated, and the recent Hall of Fame snub of Eli Manning may provide some troubling clues. In February 2025, Manning, Rivers' draft night counterpart, failed to receive the 80% of votes needed for first ballot induction, despite winning 2 Super Bowls and 2 Super Bowl MVPs. This sent shockwaves through the football world. If Manning, with his playoff success and Super Bowl rings, couldn't get in on the first ballot, what does that mean for Rivers, who never even made it to the big game? Hall of Fame quarterback and selection committee member Dan Fouts weighed in back in 2021, saying, "As far as Rivers' chances, I think he'll get a tremendous amount of consideration. I like his chances, but you never know." Fouts himself presents an interesting parallel. Like Rivers, he spent his entire career with the Chargers. Like Rivers, he never won a Super Bowl. Yet Fouts made it to Canton. The difference? The era. When Fouts played, statistical accomplishments carried more weight. In today's NFL, with rule changes favoring offense and passing numbers inflating across the board, stats alone may not be enough. The Pro Football Hall of Fame website states that the Hall celebrates football excellence, the heroes of the game, and individual excellence. By these measures, Rivers certainly qualifies, but the unwritten rule of the Hall of Fame has always been that quarterbacks are judged primarily by championships. Fair or not, that's the reality Rivers faces. Perhaps the most telling aspect of Rivers' legacy is how fans remember him. Chargers fans, who watched him give everything to their franchise for 16 years, overwhelmingly believe he belongs in Canton. As one fan put it in the San Diego Union Tribune, "Growing up a Chargers fan, I've always loved watching Rivers. He was super energetic and a great quarterback. I think he belongs in the Hall of Fame." Neutral observers point to his statistics and durability as Hall of Fame worthy. They note that several quarterbacks who never won Super Bowls, Dan Marino, Warren Moon, Jim Kelly, and yes, Dan Fouts, have busts in Canton. Even Rivers' rivals respected him. Defensive players who faced him regularly speak of his competitive fire, his intelligence, and his ability to dissect defenses. And yet, the committee that matters, the Hall of Fame voters, seems unconvinced. As they demonstrated with Eli Manning's first ballot rejection, being very good may no longer be good enough for Canton. In an era where Tom Brady won 7 Super Bowls and Patrick Mahomes is redefining what's possible at the position, the bar for quarterback excellence has perhaps been raised too high for Rivers to clear. This is the tragedy of Philip Rivers' career. He was never the best quarterback in the NFL in any given year. He never won an MVP award. He was never the last quarterback standing at the end of a season. He never won a Super Bowl. He was never even the most famous quarterback from his own draft class. Both Manning and Roethlisberger achieved greater fame and playoff success. What Rivers was, however, was consistently excellent for nearly 2 decades. He was available every Sunday, never missing a start due to injury after becoming the starter. He was authentic in an era of manufactured personalities. He was loyal in an era of constant player movement. Yet, as we've seen with the Hall of Fame selection process, being very good for a very long time may not be enough. Football immortality requires moments, Super Bowl victories, iconic playoff performances, individual awards that Rivers simply doesn't have on his resume. And so, a player who ranks among the top 5 in most major quarterback statistical categories risks being forgotten by history. A player who embodied toughness, competitiveness, and excellence may be reduced to a footnote in the stories of Manning and Roethlisberger. The man who played through a torn ACL in a championship game. The quarterback who started 252 consecutive games. The competitor who talked trash without cursing. The leader who gave everything to the Chargers for 16 years. Philip Rivers deserves better. He deserves to be remembered as what he truly was. One of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game. And he deserves a gold jacket and a bust in Canton. Will he get there eventually? Time will tell. But the fact that we're even having this debate about a player with his resume speaks volumes about how we value and remember athletes in modern sports. In the end, Philip Rivers' legacy transcends the Hall of Fame. His impact on the game, on the Chargers franchise, and on the fans who watched him play cannot be measured by a gold jacket or a bronze bust. What Rivers gave to football was authenticity. In an era of carefully crafted images and corporate-approved sound bites, he was refreshingly real. He competed with passion, celebrated with joy, and played the game the way it was meant to be played, with heart and soul. Whether or not the Hall of Fame eventually recognizes his greatness, those who watched Rivers play will never forget him. The dad-gumming, gosh-darn-it slinging, unorthodox throwing, defense reading, never missing a game Philip Rivers was truly one of a kind. And in a sport that too often reduces players to statistics and championships, perhaps that's the greatest accomplishment of all. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Philip Rivers' career and the Hall of Fame debate, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more sports documentaries and analysis. Let us know in the comments whether you think Rivers belongs in Canton. Until next time, remember that true greatness isn't always recognized with trophies and accolades. Sometimes it's in the day in, day out excellence that defines a career and a life.